Karoline Leavitt sat in her Washington, D.C. apartment on a cold Friday evening. Rain tapped against her window as she scrolled through her phone. Each swipe of her finger made her frown deepen. At 28 years old, she had already worked in the White House as the youngest press secretary in history. But tonight, she wasn't thinking about politics or press conferences. She was watching clips from last night's big Hollywood awards show. And the winner is someone who actually believes in science, not fairy tales. The famous actor on the screen laughed as he handed a golden trophy to another celebrity. The crowd roared with laughter. The camera panned to show all the famous faces clapping and nodding. Karoline put her phone down and rubbed her eyes. This was the third awards show this year where celebrities had made fun of people with religious beliefs. It wasn't just a joke here or there anymore. It felt like a pattern. Her phone rang. The name Frank Mason lit up the screen. Frank had been her friend since college. He now worked as a communications expert for a senator. "Hello?" Karoline answered. "Please tell me you didn't watch that garbage last night," Frank said without saying hello first. Karoline smiled despite her mood. Frank always knew what was on her mind. "I just watched some clips. It was worse than I thought," she said. "Their ratings dropped again. Down 15% from last year," Frank said. "Maybe if they spent less time insulting half the country, more people would watch." Karoline walked to her kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. It's not even good comedy anymore. Just the same tired jokes about how stupid they think religious people are. Remember when award shows were about, the actual movies? Frank laughed. Karoline didn't laugh. "It's more than that, Frank. These aren't just jokes. They shape how people think. They make it seem like you can't be smart and have faith at the same time." She looked at the family photo on her refrigerator. Her parents, her younger sister, all standing in front of their small New Hampshire church. The place where she had learned about kindness, community, and purpose. "You know what bugs me most?" she continued. "These same celebrities talk about being kind and accepting of everyone. Except people who believe in God." Frank was quiet for a moment. "So what are you going to do about it?" Karoline almost dropped her glass. "Me? What can I do about Hollywood? Are you kidding?" Frank said. "You were the face of the White House. Before you turn 30, people listen when you talk. You have 2 million followers online. You get invited on all the big news shows." Karoline walked back to her living room and looked out the window at the Washington Monument glowing in the distance. For years, she had been careful with her words. She had built her career on being smart, prepared, and measured. Never too emotional. Never too controversial. "I can't just start a fight with Hollywood," she said. "Why not?" Frank asked. "Someone needs to stand up to them. Why not you?" After they hung up, Karoline couldn't stop thinking about their conversation. She opened her laptop and began searching for information. She found study after study showing how people of faith were portrayed in movies and TV shows. The pattern was clear. If a character was religious, they were almost always shown as stupid, crazy, or evil. She searched more and found interviews with actors who had been pushed out of big roles because they talked about their faith. Some had been told directly to keep their beliefs private if they wanted to keep working. The clock showed 2:15 a.m. when Karoline finally closed her laptop. She hadn't planned to stay up so late, but once she started researching, she couldn't stop. The problem was bigger than she had realized. The next morning, Karoline woke up to a text message from Lisa Jordan, a producer for the show American. "Morning," the message read. "Can you come on the show next week to talk about the new education bill? Tuesday at 8 a.m. segment." Karoline had been on American Morning many times before. It was one of the biggest morning news shows in the country. Usually she discussed politics, elections, or her experience as a young woman in Washington. She started to type her usual, "Yes, happy to join" response, but stopped. An idea was forming in her mind. What if she used this platform to say what millions of Americans were thinking? What if she finally stopped holding back? Her finger hovered over the phone screen. This could change everything. People might get angry. She might lose future TV opportunities. Some politicians might not want to work with her anymore. But then she thought about all the people who felt mocked and looked down on by Hollywood. People like her parents, her neighbors growing up, and millions of Americans who were tired of being treated like they were stupid just because they had faith. "Happy to join on Tuesday," she texted back. Looking forward to it. Over the next few days, Karoline prepared differently than she ever had before. Instead of just reading about the education bill, she gathered facts and figures about Hollywood's treatment of religious Americans. She practiced what she would say and how she would say it. Not angry, but clear and firm. On Monday night, her phone rang again. It was Frank. "Ready for tomorrow?" he asked. "I think so," Karoline said. "But I'm going off script. I'm going to talk about Hollywood's problem with faith." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Frank, are you there?" "Yeah, I'm here," he said. "Just surprised." "That's a big step, Karoline." "Are you sure?" She looked at all the research spread across her kitchen table. All the stories of people who had been pushed aside because of their beliefs. "Unsure," she said. "Someone needs to say something. It might as well be me." "Well, you always were the brave one," Frank said. "Just be careful. These people play dirty when they're challenged." "I know," Karoline said. "But this isn't about me. It's about all the people who feel like their voices don't matter." After they hung up, Karoline couldn't sleep. She paced around her apartment, practicing what she would say, imagining how the host might respond. She was nervous, but also felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in her career, she wasn't going to play it safe. She was going to speak her truth. The next morning came quickly. Karoline arrived at the studio an hour early. The producer, a woman named Diane Kelly, greeted her with a coffee and a schedule for the segment. "We'll start with the education bill, then move to your thoughts on youth voter engagement, and end with a few questions about your time in the White House," Diane explained. "Greg is excited to have you back on the show." Greg Patterson had been the host of American Morning for 15 years. He was known for being friendly but not very deep. He liked to keep things light and avoid controversy. "Sounds good, Karoline." Sod, not revealing her plans. As she sat in the makeup chair, Karoline felt her heart beating faster. Was she really going to do this? Was she really going to challenge one of the most powerful forces in American culture? She took a deep breath and looked at her reflection in the mirror. "Time to stop holding back," she whispered to herself. A production assistant came to lead her to the set. The bright lights, the famous blue couch, the large desk where Greg Patterson sat checking his notes. It was all familiar to Karoline. But today felt different. Today might change everything. "We're on in 3, 2, 1. The floor director counted down. The red light on the camera turned on. It was time. The red light on the camera glowed. Greg Patterson smiled his famous smile at the viewers. "Welcome back to American Morning. I'm Greg Patterson. Today we are joined by Karoline Leavitt, former White House press secretary and one of the youngest political voices in Washington." "Good morning, Karoline." "Good morning, Greg. Thank you for having me," Karoline said. She sat straight in her chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Let's start with the new education bill moving through Congress. You've been vocal about it on social media. What are your thoughts?" Greg asked. Karoline discussed the bill for 5 minutes. She knew this topic well. Her answers were clear and to the point. Greg nodded along, asking simple follow-up questions. "Now let's talk about young voters," Greg said, moving to the next planned topic. "With elections coming up, how can candidates Better connect with people under 30? This was her opening. Karoline took a small breath. Young people want honesty, Greg. They can spot fake messages right away. That's why many are turning away from Hollywood and mainstream entertainment. Greg's eyebrows went up slightly, but he kept his smile. Oh, how do you mean? Young Americans are tired of being told what to think. They're tired of watching award shows where celebrities mock people of faith. They're tired of movies where religious characters are always crazy or stupid. Karoline said. Greg shifted his seat. This wasn't in the script they had planned. Well, entertainment has always pushed boundaries, Greg began. There's a difference between pushing boundaries and constantly making fun of the same group of people, Karoline said. Her voice was calm but firm. Last week's big awards show had 3 separate jokes mocking people who believe in God. Can you imagine if they had made those same jokes about any other group? Greg glanced off camera, probably looking at his producer for guidance. Those are just jokes, though. Comedians make fun of everyone, Greg said with a small laugh. Do they? When was the last time you heard a comedian at one of these shows make fun of atheists? Or people who believe in certain other religions? It only seems to be acceptable to mock Christians, Karoline said. The studio felt very quiet now. The crew members behind the cameras were watching with wide eyes. You've worked in both politics and media, Karoline continued. You know there's an unwritten rule in Hollywood. It's okay to make fun of people of faith. It's okay to show them as backwards or stupid in movies and TV shows. Greg tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. Let's talk about your time in the White House. This matters more, Greg, Karoline said. She pulled out her phone. I've been doing research. In the top 100 movies last year, 86% of religious characters were portrayed as villains, mentally ill, or just plain dumb. Does that seem fair to you? Greg's smile was gone now. We weren't planning to discuss Hollywood today, but culture shapes everything else, including politics, Karoline said. When one group is constantly mocked and another is constantly celebrated, that affects our whole society. It tells young people that if they have faith, they should hide it or be ashamed of it. The red light on Greg's earpiece was blinking. His producer was probably telling him to go to commercial break. We need to take a quick break, Greg said. We'll be right back with more from Karoline Leavitt. As soon as the cameras stopped rolling, Diane Kelly rushed onto the set. What are you doing? She whispered to Karoline. This isn't what we agreed to talk about. I'm sorry, but this needs to be said, Karoline replied. Greg was talking into his earpiece, nodding and frowning. Look, Diane said, we can cut this segment short if you want to stick with this topic. Or we can get back on track with the White House stories for the last part. Karoline looked directly at Diane. I'd like to continue the conversation we were having. Diane sighed and walked back behind the cameras. Greg turned to Karoline. You're making this very difficult, he said quietly. I'm just being honest, Karoline replied. 10 seconds. Called the floor director. The red light came back on. Greg's smile returned as if by magic. Welcome back to American Morning. We're talking with Karoline Leavitt about Hollywood's portrayal of religious Americans. He said the last part like it was a question. Thank you, Greg, Karoline said. As I was saying, there's a real problem with how faith is portrayed in entertainment. But it goes beyond just movies and TV shows. There are actors, writers, and directors who have been blacklisted simply for being open about their faith. Blacklisted? That's a serious claim, Greg said. It is serious, Karoline agreed. I've spoken with people in the industry who have to hide their beliefs to keep working. One actor told me his agent said he should never mention going to church if he wanted big roles. Greg looked uncomfortable. But Hollywood is known for being very open and accepting of all kinds of people and beliefs. As long as those beliefs match what's currently popular, Karoline said. Ask yourself why so few celebrities thank God when they win awards now. Even though polls show most Americans believe in God, it's because they know there's a price to pay for being open about faith in Hollywood. The segment continued for another 5 minutes. Greg tried several times to change the subject, but Karoline kept bringing it back to Hollywood's treatment of religious Americans. She shared stories she had collected from people in the entertainment industry who felt they couldn't be open about their beliefs. "What exactly do you want to happen?" Greg finally asked, looking tired. "I want fairness," Karoline said simply. "I want people of faith to be shown as normal, complex humans in movies and TV shows, not just as villains or fools. I want actors and other creative people to be able to talk about their beliefs without fear of losing work. And I want award shows to stop thinking it's okay to mock people for having faith." As the segment ended, Greg thanked Karoline stiffly. The moment the cameras were off, Diane stormed onto the set. "That was completely unprofessional," she said to Karoline. "We invite you on to discuss specific topics, and you hijack the conversation for your own agenda. I'm sorry you feel that way," Karoline said as she removed her microphone. "But sometimes important conversations aren't comfortable ones." As Karoline left the studio building, her phone was already buzzing with messages. Frank had sent a dozen texts. "What did you just do? That was amazing. Are you crazy? You're trending on social media already. Call me ASAP." By the time Karoline got to her car, clips of her segment were already spreading online. Her phone showed hundreds of notifications. People were sharing the video with comments like, "Finally, someone said it," and "Watch Karoline Leavitt call out Hollywood." Others were attacking her. "Religious snowflake can't take a joke," and another crazy trying to censor art. Karoline's hands shook slightly as she started her car. She had expected some reaction, but nothing this fast or this big. For years she had been careful with every word she said in public. Now she had just challenged one of the most powerful forces in American culture on national television. As she drove home, her phone rang. It was Nancy Powell, her publicist. "Have you lost your mind?" Nancy almost shouted when Karoline answered. "We've spent years building your image as a serious political voice, and now this? Nancy, the morning shows won't book you again. After this stunt, you've burned a major bridge." "This matters to me," Karoline said firmly. "And based on my social media right now, it matters to a lot of other people too." "Oh, it matters all right," Nancy said. "I've already had 2 speaking events cancel on you. They don't want the controversy." Karoline pulled into the parking garage of her apartment building and stopped the car. "I understand this makes your job harder," she said, "but I'm not going to apologize for speaking the truth." After hanging up with Nancy, Karoline sat in her car for a few minutes, trying to process everything that had happened. Then she took a deep breath and called Frank. "So," he said when he answered, "you really did it." "I really did," she said. "And now I'm either having a panic attack or an adrenaline rush." "Maybe both," Frank laughed. "Well, you can't go back now. You just picked a fight with Hollywood on national television." "What should I do next?" Karoline asked. "Come to my office," Frank said. "We need to plan. Because believe me, they're going to hit back hard." As Karoline pulled out of the parking garage, she knew her life had just changed forever. There was no more holding back now. The fight had begun. Frank's office was on the 5th floor of a tall building in downtown Washington. When Karoline arrived, he was already watching replays of her interview on 3 different news channels. "You're everywhere," he said as she walked in. He pointed to his computer screen. "Over 2 million views online already, and it's only been 3 hours." Karoline put her bag down and sank into a chair. "Nancy is furious. She says I've ruined my career." Frank shook his head. "Nancy only thinks about the next booking, the next paycheck. She doesn't see the bigger picture." "And what is the bigger picture?" Karoline asked. Frank turned his computer screen toward her. It showed hundreds of comments from people responding to her interview. Many were thanking her for speaking up. Some shared stories about feeling mocked for their faith. The bigger picture is that you said what millions of Americans have been thinking for years, Frank said. No one with your platform has had the courage to say it so clearly before. Before Karoline could respond, her phone buzzed with a news alert. She looked down and her stomach dropped. "Oh no," she whispered. "What is it?" Frank asked. Karoline showed him her phone. The alert was from an entertainment news site. Top actress Olivia Winters slams religious extremist Karoline Leavitt. Frank quickly found the full story online. Olivia Winters, one of Hollywood's most famous actresses, had posted a long message attacking Karoline. It read, "Another right-wing figure trying to drag us back to the Dark Ages. The arts have always challenged outdated beliefs and pushed society forward. That's our job. If your faith can't handle a few jokes, maybe the problem is with your faith. Not with us." "Well, that didn't take long," Frank said. Karoline's phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. "Is this Karoline Leavitt?" A man's voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Jack Murphy. I'm a producer with Night Talk. We'd like you to come on the show tonight to discuss your comments about Hollywood." Night Talk was one of the biggest evening news shows in the country. Being invited on was a big deal. "Tonight?" Karoline asked, surprised. "Yes, we're doing a segment on the clash between Hollywood and religious Americans. We've also invited Olivia Winters." Karoline's heart beat faster. Olivia Winters was a Hollywood superstar with millions of followers. Going up against her on live TV would be challenging. "Can I call you back in 5 minutes?" Karoline asked. After hanging up, she looked at Frank. "Night Talk wants me on tonight with Olivia Winters," Frank whistled. "That's moving fast." They smell ratings. "Should I do it?" Karoline asked. "Do you want my honest opinion?" Frank asked. When Karoline nodded, he continued, "If you go on, Olivia will try to make you look stupid and extreme. She's been in front of cameras for 20 years. She knows how to win these fights." "So you think I should say no?" Frank smiled. "I think you should say yes, but you need to be ready for a real fight." For the next few hours, Karoline and Frank prepared for the Night Talk appearance. They researched Olivia Winters' past comments about religion. They found clips where she had mocked people of faith. They gathered statistics about religious Americans and how they were portrayed in movies. By the time Karoline arrived at the Night Talk studio that evening, she felt more prepared than she ever had for a TV appearance. But she was also more nervous. The show's host, Ben Howard, greeted her in the green room. "Quite a stir you've caused," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just speaking my truth," Karoline replied. "Well, it should be an interesting segment. Olivia is joining us remotely from Los Angeles." A few minutes later, Karoline sat under the bright studio lights. A large screen showed Olivia Winters from her home in California. The actress looked perfect as always. Her expression was cold. "Tonight, a special segment on the culture war between Hollywood and religious America," Ben Howard began. Karoline Leavitt, former White House press secretary, made waves this morning with her comments about Hollywood's treatment of people of faith. Olivia Winters, Academy Award-winning actress, has responded strongly. "Ladies, welcome to the show." Ben turned to Karoline first. "Ms. Leavitt, you claimed this morning that Hollywood mocks and belittles religious Americans. Can you explain what you mean?" Karoline took a deep breath. "It's not just my opinion, Ben. It's a pattern that's easy to see. At last week's award show alone, there were multiple jokes mocking people who believe in God. In most movies and TV shows, religious characters are portrayed as either villains, fools, or mentally ill. And behind the scenes, many actors and creators feel they must hide their faith to keep working." Ben nodded and turned to the screen. Olivia, your response? Olivia's perfect smile appeared. First, let me say I respect everyone's right to believe whatever they want. But when those beliefs are used to limit others' rights or to spread hate, then yes, we in the arts will challenge that. That's our role in society. I never said anything about limiting rights, Karoline cut in. I'm talking about the double standard. Hollywood claims to value diversity, but not diversity of thought or belief. Olivia laughed. Please, the religious right has been attacking the arts for decades. You want to censor anything that doesn't fit your narrow worldview. That's not true, Karoline said firmly. I don't want censorship. I want fair representation. I want people of faith to be shown as normal, complex humans, not just as crazy or evil characters. The debate grew more heated. Olivia accused Karoline of wanting to force religious views on everyone. Karoline pointed out that most Americans had some form of faith, yet Hollywood acted as if believing in God made you stupid or dangerous. The problem, Karoline said, is that Hollywood lives in a bubble. Most Americans believe in God in some form, but in Hollywood, that view is mocked. Maybe because we're educated, Olivia shot back. Then her eyes widened slightly, as if she realized she had said too much. Ben jumped in. Are you saying religious? People are uneducated, Olivia. Olivia tried to backtrack. No, I meant that artists tend to question traditional beliefs. That's part of creativity. You can question without mocking, Karoline said. You can explore different viewpoints without treating one group as stupid. By the end of the segment, Karoline felt exhausted, but satisfied. Olivia had revealed exactly the kind of attitude Karoline was talking about, the belief that religious people were less intelligent or educated. As Karoline left the studio, her phone was flooded with messages. The clip of Olivia saying, "Maybe because we're educated," was already going viral. People were calling it proof of Hollywood's elitism and bias against religious Americans. When Karoline got home, she found a surprising email in her inbox. It was from someone named Alan Rogers with an address from a major film studio. Ms. Leavitt, it read. I'm a director at Warner Studios. I've been watching your comments today with great interest. There are many of us in Hollywood who share your concerns, but are afraid to speak publicly. Would you be willing to have a private conversation? Karoline stared at the email for a long time. Could there really be allies within Hollywood itself? People who wanted things to change but were afraid to say so. She picked up her phone and called Frank. You're not going to believe this, she said when he answered. I just got an email from a director at Warner Studios. He says there are people in Hollywood who agree with me but are afraid to speak up. That's huge, Frank said. If there are insiders who feel the same way, this could be bigger than we thought. Karoline looked out her window at the night sky over Washington. When she had spoken up that morning, she thought she was just expressing her frustration. Now, it seemed she might have started something much bigger. What should I do next? She asked Frank. Reply to the email, he said. Let's find out who our allies are. As Karoline wrote her reply to Alan Rogers, she wondered what she had set in motion. The backlash was already fierce. But maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for real change. 3 days after her debate with Olivia Winters, Karoline sat at a quiet table in the back of a small coffee shop in Georgetown. She checked her watch again. It was almost 10 minutes past the scheduled meeting time. Maybe Alan Rogers had changed his mind. Just as she was considering leaving, a tall man with gray hair and glasses hurried through the door. He looked around, spotted Karoline, and walked quickly to her table. Ms. Leavitt, I'm Alan Rogers. Sorry, I'm late. He offered his hand, which Karoline shook. Washington traffic is worse than L.A. Please, call me Karoline, she said. Thank you for reaching out. Alan ordered a coffee and then leaned forward, speaking quietly. I need to be careful. If people in the industry knew I was meeting with you, It could cause problems for my current projects. Karoline nodded. I understand. Your email mentioned others who share my concerns? Alan took a sip of his coffee. More than you might think. Hollywood isn't one big group that all thinks the same way. There are many people of faith working in the industry. Writers, actors, directors, crew members. But most stay quiet about it. Why? Karoline asked, though she already knew the answer. Fear. Alan said simply. Fear of being labeled. Fear of losing opportunities. Hollywood talks about diversity all the time, but religious diversity is not what they mean. Alan told Karoline about his own experiences. He had been making films for over 20 years. His movies had made billions of dollars. But when he once mentioned his faith in an interview, suddenly meetings got canceled. Projects were delayed. Nothing direct was ever said, but the message was clear. It's not just Christians, Alan added. Jewish filmmakers have told me similar stories. Anyone who takes their faith seriously faces the same problem. You can be spiritually curious in Hollywood, but actual religious belief is seen as backward. So what do we do about it? Karoline asked. Alan smiled for the first time. That's why I wanted to meet you. You've started something important. Your TV appearances have people talking. I've received messages from others in the industry who were glad to hear someone finally speaking up. He pulled out his phone and showed Karoline some texts he had received from other Hollywood insiders. One from a famous actress read, "Finally, someone is saying what we've all been thinking. I'm sick of hiding my Bible in my trailer." I never expected this, Karoline admitted. I was just frustrated and spoke my mind. Sometimes that's all it takes, Alan said. One person willing to say the truth out loud. Alan explained that he had been thinking about this issue for years. He had even started writing a script about a young actor facing pressure to hide his faith to succeed in Hollywood. But I want to do more than just make a movie about the problem, he said. I want to actually change things. As their meeting continued, Alan shared an idea that had been forming in his mind. What if they created a network of people in entertainment who were willing to support each other? Not just Christians, but people of all faiths who believed religious. Characters deserved fair treatment in movies and TV shows. It wouldn't be about forcing our views on others, Alan explained. It would be about ending the double standard. About creating space for all voices, including religious ones. Karoline was excited by the idea, but also cautious. How many people would actually join? The risk seems high. That's where you come in, Alan said. You're outside the Hollywood system. You can speak freely in a way that many of us can't. If you continue to bring attention to this issue, it gives cover for others to speak up too. By the time they finished their coffee, Karoline and Alan had the beginnings of a plan. Alan would quietly reach out to trusted friends in the industry. Karoline would continue to speak publicly about the issue, bringing more attention to it. There's someone else you should meet, Alan said as they prepared to leave, Ryan Lewis. Karoline's eyes widened. The action movie star? Alan nodded. He's been a man of faith his whole life. But his agents made it clear early in his career. Keep it quiet or watch the roles dry up. He's interested in talking with you. Over the next 2 weeks, Karoline met secretly with several Hollywood insiders. Each had similar stories. They felt forced to hide their beliefs to protect their careers. Some had been directly told to keep their faith private. Others had watched friends lose opportunities after mentioning religion in interviews. Ryan Lewis met Karoline at a private room in a Washington hotel. The famous actor was even more handsome in person than on screen, but he seemed tired and nervous. I've been living a double life for 15 years, he told Karoline. I go to church every Sunday when I'm not filming, but I never mention it publicly. My fans have no idea about a huge part of who I really am. Why take the risk of speaking out now? Karoline asked. Ryan looked out the window before answering. I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of watching faith get mocked in every movie. And, honestly, I've made enough money. If my career suffers, I'll be okay. Not everyone Karoline met was ready to go public. A young actress named Melissa Lawson was passionate about change, but feared being blacklisted before her career even took off. I just got my first big role, Melissa explained during their meeting. If I speak out now, it could be my last. Karoline understood their concerns. The entertainment industry was powerful. Careers could be destroyed with a few phone calls. But with each meeting, she became more convinced that change was possible. Frank remained her closest advisor through it all. When Karoline told him about the growing network of Hollywood insiders, he was both excited and concerned. This is bigger than we thought, he said during a late-night strategy session in his office, but also more dangerous. Olivia Winters and her friends won't just sit back and watch this happen. He was right. The backlash against Karoline had grown worse. Every day brought new attacks. Online articles called her the face of religious extremism and Hollywood's enemy number one. Late-night comedians made her the butt of jokes. Nancy, her publicist, had officially dropped her as a client. Most painful were the political friends who now avoided her. Senator Peter Walsh, her former boss, called one evening. Karoline, you know I respect you, he began. But this crusade against Hollywood isn't helping anyone. You're making enemies of people we need as allies on other issues. This isn't a crusade, Senator, Karoline replied. It's about basic fairness. About treating people of faith with the same respect given to everyone else. Whatever you call it, it's causing problems. I've got donors threatening to pull support if I don't distance myself from you. After the call ended, Karoline felt a wave of doubt. Was this worth the cost? She had worked her whole life to build a career in politics. Now former allies were turning away. Job opportunities were drying up. Her savings wouldn't last forever. That night, she called Alan Rogers. I'm not sure I can keep doing this, she admitted. The attacks keep getting worse. I'm losing friends and opportunities. Alan was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? After our first meeting, Ryan Lewis called 3 major studio heads. He told them he wouldn't consider any new roles unless they committed to fair treatment of religious characters in their films. What happened? Karoline asked, too hung up on him. But the third listened. That studio is now reviewing all their upcoming scripts to see how religious characters are portrayed. Karoline felt a spark of hope. Really? Yes, and Melissa Lawson? She told her director she wouldn't say a line-mocking prayer, even if it cost her the role. The director actually rewrote the scene. I had no idea, Karoline said. Small changes, but real ones, Alan said. This is just the beginning, Karoline. People are finding their courage because of you. As they talked more, a new plan began to take shape. It wasn't enough to just point out the problem. They needed to offer a solution. To show Hollywood there was a better way forward. What if we created our own content? Alan suggested. Not preachy religious films, but quality entertainment that treats faith fairly. Shows that religious characters can be complex, intelligent people, not just stereotypes. By the time the call ended, Karoline felt renewed determination. The road ahead would be difficult. The attacks would continue. But she was no longer fighting alone. 1 year had passed since Karoline Leavitt first spoke out on American Morning. She stood backstage at the Liberty Film Festival, watching the audience fill the large theater. People of all ages and backgrounds took their seats, talking excitedly about the films they had seen over the past week. Can you believe how much has changed in just 1 year? Frank asked, standing beside her. Karoline smiled. Some days I still can't believe any of this is real. The Liberty Film Festival had started as a small idea during a late-night phone call between Karoline and Alan Rogers. They wanted to create a space where films that treated faith with respect could be shown and celebrated. Not just religious films, but any movies that portrayed people of faith as normal, complex humans rather than stereotypes. They had expected maybe a dozen film submissions and a small local audience. Instead, they received over 200 submissions from filmmakers around the world. The festival had grown so large they had to move it to a bigger venue twice. Tonight was the closing ceremony, where the festival's top prize would be awarded. The theater quieted as Alan Rogers walked onto the stage. "Welcome to the final night of the first annual Liberty Film Festival," Alan said into the microphone. "When we started planning this event, many people told us it would fail. They said there was no audience for films that treat faith respectfully. Looking out at all of you tonight, I think we've proven them wrong." The audience cheered and clapped. Karoline felt a lump in her throat. The past year had been the hardest of her life, but also the most meaningful. After her meetings with Alan Rogers and other Hollywood insiders, they had formed an organization called Fair Voices. Their goal was simple: to promote fair representation of religious characters in film and television, and to support people of faith working in entertainment. The backlash had been fierce. Olivia Winters and other celebrities called for a boycott of any studio that worked with Fair Voices. Online trolls attacked Karoline daily. She received hate mail and even death threats. Several times she had almost given up, but for every attack, there was also support. Ordinary Americans sent thousands of messages thanking her for speaking up. Some actors and filmmakers risked their careers to publicly join Fair Voices. And slowly, things began to change. Ryan Lewis made headlines when he announced he would only work with studios that signed Fair Voices' representation pledge. The pledge simply asked studios to portray religious characters with the same complexity and respect given to other groups. Most studios ignored the pledge at first. But Ryan Lewis was a major star whose films made millions. When he turned down a leading role in a blockbuster film over the issue, people took notice. Two smaller studios signed the pledge, followed by a mid-sized one. Projects began to develop that never would have been made before. "And now," Alan continued on stage, "I'd like to invite the woman who made all this possible. Without her courage to speak up that first day, none of us would be here. Please welcome Karoline Leavitt." As Karoline walked onto the stage, the audience stood and applauded. She waited for the clapping to die down before speaking. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began. "This festival isn't about pushing one set of beliefs. It's about making sure all voices are heard and respected in our culture. For too long, people of faith have been portrayed as either villains or fools in entertainment. All we've asked for is the same fair treatment given to other groups." Karoline looked out at the diverse audience. "The amazing thing is how many people from all different backgrounds have supported this cause. People who may not share the same faith, but who believe in fairness and respect for all." She told the story of their first small victory, a major studio that agreed to review scripts for religious stereotypes, the same way they already reviewed for other types of bias. Then came a popular TV show that added a religious character who was also smart and kind, breaking the usual stereotype. "These may seem like small changes," Karoline said, "but they matter. They help create a culture where no one feels mocked or excluded because of their beliefs." After her speech, Karoline returned backstage while Alan announced the festival winners. She checked her phone and saw a message from Melissa Lawson, the young actress who had been afraid to speak up a year ago. "Just heard I got the lead role in Peterson's new film," the message read. "And I didn't have to hide who I am to get it." Karoline smiled. This was why all the struggles had been worth it. Not for her own fame or success, but for people like Melissa who could now be their full, authentic selves without fear. The final award of the night went to a film called Believer, Directed by Alan Rogers and starring Ryan Lewis, it told the story of a journalist investigating religious persecution around the world. The film wasn't preachy or simple. It showed complex characters wrestling with difficult questions about faith and doubt. After the ceremony ended, Karoline joined Alan, Ryan, and other members of Fair Voices for a small celebration in a room behind the theater. 5 major studios have asked to meet with us next week, Alan told the group. They've seen the success of the films at this festival and want to discuss the representation pledge. And my new film opens in 2,000 theaters next month, Ryan added. Early reviews are calling it thoughtful and respectful of faith. Without being preachy. Those aren't words critics usually use for films with religious themes. Karoline listened to their excited conversation, feeling both happy and a little apart from it all. Her role had changed over the past year. She was no longer the main voice of the movement. More and more Hollywood insiders were speaking up publicly, now using their own platforms to call for change. Frank noticed her quiet mood and came to sit beside her. Penny, for your thoughts? I was just thinking about that first day on American Morning, Karoline said. How scared I was to speak up. How I had no idea what would happen next. You started something important, Frank said. You should be proud. I am, Karoline said. But I'm also thinking about what comes next for me personally. The truth was, Karoline had been considering her future for weeks. Her political career had taken a different path than she had planned. Some doors had closed because of her stand against Hollywood. But new ones had opened too. Several universities had invited her to speak about faith and culture. A publisher had offered her a book deal. And just yesterday, she had received an intriguing email from a news network about hosting a show focused on the intersection of culture, faith, and politics. I think I'm ready for a new challenge, she told Frank. The movement doesn't need me front and center anymore. It has its own momentum now. Whatever you decide to do next, I'm with you, Frank said. Though I have to warn you, my consulting fees have gone up. Karoline laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. On the other side of the room, Melissa Lawson was telling a group of young filmmakers about her latest project. Ryan Lewis was deep in conversation with 2 studio executives who had previously refused to even meet with Fair Voices. A year ago, Karoline had been afraid that speaking up would end her career. Instead, it had started a movement. Not everything had changed. There were still stereotypes in movies and TV shows. There were still people in Hollywood who mocked faith. But there was also new space for different voices and perspectives. As the evening wound down, Karoline found herself standing next to Alan. Did you ever imagine we'd come this far in just 1 year? She asked him. Alan smiled. I hoped, but I wasn't sure. Change usually happens slowly in Hollywood. There's still a long way to go, Karoline said. Yes, Alan agreed. But we've proven something important. When people stop holding back, when they speak their truth with courage and respect, others will join them. That's how real change happens, Karoline looked around the room at all the people who had found their voices over the past year. Some were people of deep faith. Others simply believed in fairness and respect for all viewpoints. Together, they had started to create a culture where no one had to hide who they were or what they believed. It had all started with a decision to stop holding back, to speak the truth even when it was difficult. And that, Karoline realized, would always be the most important lesson of all.